Hi everyone, I'm Steve here again with Dr. Nario. How's it going, Dr. Nario?
Pretty good. How are you, Steve?
Good. So if you guys like interviews with doctors, nutritionists, personal trainers, fitness stuff, health club stuff, subscribe to the channel. Dr. Nario is with Biointegrative Health Center in Reno, Nevada. You can check them out online and see what they do, all the different things that they treat. So we're going to talk about fat. There's all kinds of fat: visceral fat, brown fat, white fat. But your body processes and uses certain types of fat better than others. So there's fat that's better than others. So, for instance, visceral fat is bad, right?
Correct. That is correct.
So tell us about brown fat. What is it, and why is it important?
Well, Steve, brown fat is actually, you can compare this to the other type of fat, which is white fat. So the white fat is the one that's inflammatory, the one that actually contains or holds on to a lot of toxins in your body, especially the fat soluble ones. And the opposite of that is called brown fat or brown adipocytes, as we call it. And this is more famous with, for example, babies or children, right? So when they need heat, they shiver, they shake. And a lot of these heat generations are also coming from the motion itself, but also from these brown fat that's very prominent in these children. And they're not, I mean, you look at them, they're like plump. And you can't tell them they're obese. They haven't been eating bacon or the junk food since the time they got born. But these are just natural adipose fat that keeps their temperature regulated. And this is the one that we want to promote now for adults, even though we kind of burned up all of these brown stuff that we got since we got exposed to all of these toxins. But we want to make sure that it is still present. And we want to tell everybody you still have brown fat. Don't lose hope. It's usually located in your cervical area, cervicolavicular, axillary, around your spine, and even abdominal fat. Even though you're saying you have a big belly, it's not all white fat. There's still brown fat in there. And the node function of these brown fat would be thermogenesis, making energy, making you warm. And how does it do that? It's through the mitochondria. And when you activate these adipocytes or brown fat, you actually flip the switch through the receptor called uncoupling protein 1 or UCP1, allowing these brown fat to generate a lot of heat to burn a lot of calories. And thus, formation of these brown fat into what we call beige fat or adipocytes, which can actually burn stored fat more to generate and actually create a lot of energy that you can use and can reduce even fat mass.
Now, we should clarify that we're talking about fat on the body, not fat
Yes,
that you eat. So,
not bacon
just,
fat.
right, just so everyone knows, we're talking about this is fat that's stored on your body, and the brown fat is more readily available
Right,
for
correct.
using for energy, right? So we want more brown fat. Now, you can have white fat and brown fat subcutaneously, right?
Mm,
That's that's fat that's under the skin, not internal, or fat that you can pinch. Now, we can have white and fat, or what? No, white and brown fat. Um, so, can you talk a little more about the difference and what what stimulates our body to store brown fat?
right. Well, Steve, as I told you, brown fat is already present in our system. We just need to convert them from white to brown, and that's possible. And the thing that I mentioned to you a while ago, that the trigger or the conversion of this white into brown energy producing or burning fat cells can be actually be multifactorial. And a lot of these things I can tell you, for example, let me just run it down. There's a lot of dietary measures that somebody can actually do to actually produce this. And one would be, for example, increasing polyphenols. A lot of green tea, which has EGCG, coffee, apples, berries, dark chocolate. You have to remember when you eat or consume some of this, it makes you warm, right? And these polyphenols actually activates UCP1, as I mentioned to you a while ago. Another one would be omega 3s. Omega 3s from fish, flax seeds, walnuts activates another, what we call PPAR activity to increase this conversion. Another one, I think you can relate to this, is the ingestion of chili peppers. These actually contain capsaicin, and capsaicin stimulates CRPV1 to actually stimulate thermogenesis and convert these guys into beige fat as well. Having a healthy microbiome, putting prebiotics and probiotics together, all of those help in terms of dietary intervention. There's others that I can mention in a bit.
Okay, so what you're saying is what we eat, what we put in our body, helps convert white fat to brown fat.
Right. And you have to remember, what we eat is the one that actually produces more white fat. So we have to make sure we control that as well through everything that I just mentioned.
What types of foods would increase white fat?
Well, you would probably know about this, the SAD diet, the standard American diet, unfortunately. This will all convert all our brown into white. And of course, now we have to have an uphill battle to convert all of these white fat into brown when you talk about backpedaling.
What kind of symptoms do you see if you are suspicious that someone is converting brown fat to white fat? What kind of symptoms do you see? Do you see people getting obese? Do they complain of certain side effects? Is there something that you notice or you see within your clientele base or your patients that says that maybe they're converting brown fat to white fat, which is not good?
Right. So a lot of these comorbidities that we see, obesity, diabetes, hypertension, even cancer, cardiovascular issues, all of these are clues for you that we don't have to see an obese individual actually conclude that there is accumulation of white fat. When we talk about white fat, it's not only the visible fat that you see, but you have to remember that fat can also be inserted in between the muscles. That's why the leanest, the thinnest person cannot be judged to be the healthiest to say that, oh, they're not going to get sick because they're so lean and mean. But behind the scenes, there's actually chaotic destruction of what's going on, building up to a specific pathology. That's why this is where you and your doctor need to work together to actually find if you're in this category.
Right. So people may have what you're talking about there is like people that look at a steak. Some steaks have a lot of marbling. There's a lot of fat in them. Well,
Right,
that's in the muscle. So
right.
we can have fat in our muscle, but we can also have internal fat around our organs, in our liver, and all that. Um, that's correct, right?
That's unfortunately correct. It hides behind the scenes where we need to investigate a little bit more.
So is it harder? Is it possible? Let me phrase it that way. Is it possible for our bodies to burn white fat, or is it just much more difficult to burn white fat?
All right. Well, Steve, the theory here is that once you have white fat, the only thing you could really do is shrink it. Once it's there, it's there. And that's why the only another, I guess, savior behind this would be converting it into brown fat. It just shrinks. It's hard when you lose weight. You really don't dispose of it, and that's why it's easy to get fat again or overweight once you think you lost the weight just by overindulging because you're going to feed them again and blow them up. That's why that's kind of like the hard rule that you don't want to gain white fat at the beginning because once it's there, it's there. The only thing you can do is shrink it, unfortunately.
Okay, so I think what you're saying is you have fat cells, and the only way to get rid of the white fat is to convert it to brown fat, right?
That
Or
is
we can
correct.
shrink those. If we're shrinking those white fat cells, that's because it's converting to brown fat where it can actually be burned. Is that right?
That's right. And that's why these specific methods that I'm telling you right now actually are very helpful. But we don't need liposuction, that we don't need to, yeah, get into very strenuous exercise, but we should, right? But I'm telling you, there are natural ways on how to even do this. So let me give you another, let's touch up on that a little bit more. Here's the fad that you would probably see, the cold showers or the dipping in cold baths. So all of these are for the purpose of converting those white into brown. But for example, for the ones who cannot afford going to cryotherapy or dipping themselves in cold baths, brief exposure to cold or even cold showers, as we call it, 15 to 20 minutes. I know that's a little demanding of a time, but the temperature should be 16 to 19 degrees Celsius or 60 to 66 Fahrenheit. So let me expound that for the crowd here. 16 to 19 degrees Celsius is comparable to like a cool autumn day, wherein there is like it's like a fall afternoon where you might need a light jacket or a sweater, or it's like an indoor air conditioning setting, cool water in a swimming pool, for example, or even your basement or cellar temperature. That's why it's not does not require you to jump into ice. It doesn't require you all these fancy machines. Getting into that shower, just to stay for that long, though, if you can, I guess, stand it, can actually simulate and trigger the UCP1 activation for the conversion.
Okay, so obviously, when we get into cold, say somebody does cryotherapy or a 15-minute cold shower, that burns energy, right?
Hmm. That's right. Because
But you're saying it also converts white to brown.
hmm That's right.
And then
Because of that.
where we can burn the brown much easier.
Right. That is correct. That is correct.
So what I hear you saying is that cold plunges, the colder temperatures, however you choose to do that, and you said SAD, standard American diet. We need to
Hmm.
get rid of processed foods, right? Means don't eat things in a package.
Definitely, definitely. So those are the hearts of kind of the intervention. But of course, we already know this. Regular exercise definitely does that. Sleep optimization of 7 to 9 hours, stress reduction, of course, balancing other hormones, especially thyroid hormones. You have to remember burning. When you hear the word burning or metabolism, always make sure that your thyroid hormones are optimized because it's going to be hard for you to do this if you're not at par. And even, of course, insulin. So the ones who's pre-diabetic or diabetic, they're going to have a little of a harder time to convert this if they're not also in line with the norm.
And you mentioned briefly at the beginning the gut. If our gut is healthier, this is going to help also, right?
Definitely. And that's why when you eat polyphenols, lots of vegetables and fiber, those healthy gut bacteria actually will contribute to this. Well, how does it do that? Because when you have a lot of these good guys, they create a lot of short chain fatty acids like acetate and butyrate to activate UCP1.
Well, very interesting, and it's good advice. It's good information on how to actually burn fat, and it's not always about how much you're eating; it's what you're eating and what you're doing. And we preach that on this channel all the time. So, any last thoughts, maybe that I didn't think to ask, or anything else that you would add to this?
Well, here's everybody probably who wants to be in this call to hear what type of supplements will actually promote these conversions. So let me give you a top five that I can impart to you guys. One is resveratrol, so found in red grapes. That's, if you can eat red grapes or drink wine, it's going to be there. Curcumin, so this actually promotes the warmth. Everybody knows this is parts of spices of India that they put in their food. Another one is berberine. So activates AMPK and enhances mitochondrial biogenesis and browning. Another one, vitamin D. So always you have to be on vitamin D regardless, especially now during the wintertime, you don't see the sun. And this also promotes metabolic activity and fat function conversion. And the one that we know about is caffeine. Though not a big fan of it, but it's actually promoting the sympathetic activation of this brown fat to turn into beige fat. So beige fat is where you really want to be because you have to remember brown and beige, they're different. Beige is at the most powerful form of these brown fat, but they can actually produce a lot of calorie burning capacities. And there's a world out there that's called peptide therapy and investigational in a sense, like BPC 157, MOTS-C, are explored to actually trigger, if they can trigger UCP1 to convert these fats into brown. So a lot of these things, natural, all of these are free. Everybody just needs to know the significance of why we need to convert these whites into brown.
Right. You just named like five things: caffeine, resveratrol, berberine, uh,
Mhm.
turmeric, and vitamin D.
Yeah, that is right.
Okay. Well, Doctor, as always, we appreciate your time and your input on this. Is basically um, how to burn fat. So, thanks for being with us.
Well, Steve, thank you again for having me. As we all know, that knowledge is power. And thank you for letting me provide you with edge on longevity and health maintenance, which I call the biological edge or the bio edge.